It's 1944. You've just stepped down from a crowded cattle car after days of riding. You step off the train, and a Nazi official gestures either to the right or the left, determining your fate in an instant. But what of those who go to the left? In this chilling documentary, we follow the victims of Auschwitz from their selection to their extermination. We'll expose the camp's worst killing centers as we take you through how the Nazis mechanized mass murder on an unprecedented scale. Prepare for a bitter reminder of the worst in humanity. The Deceptive Arrival, a Journey into Hell. As the cattle car doors creaked open, a surreal scene unfolded before the eyes of the exhausted prisoners. The railway platform at Auschwitz-Birkenau, carefully designed to maintain an illusion of normalcy, stretched out before them. Clean-swept concrete, neatly manicured grass, and orderly rows of buildings created a facade of civility that belied the true nature of this hellish place. The moment of relief at finally escaping the cramped, suffocating confines of the cattle cars was brutally short-lived. Within seconds, the air erupted with shouts and commands as SS officers and their auxiliaries descended upon the new arrivals. Families were torn apart, loved ones separated, and the carefully maintained veneer of order dissolved into chaos. Amidst the confusion and terror, a chilling process unfolded. SS doctors and officers, standing imperiously on the platform, began making rapid-fire decisions that would determine the fate of each prisoner. With a mere glance and a flick of the wrist, they directed individuals to the left or the right. This seemingly arbitrary division held a sinister significance that few of the new arrivals could have imagined. The criteria for these life-or-death decisions were ruthlessly efficient. Those deemed fit for labor, typically young men and women without children, were sent to the right. The elderly, the infirm, pregnant women and children were directed to the left. In a matter of seconds, Nazi officers condemned thousands to immediate death based on nothing more than appearance and perceived usefulness. The psychological impact of this process was profound, both for the victims and the perpetrators. For the newly arrived prisoners, confusion gave way to mounting dread as families were split apart, often never to see each other again. Children were torn from their mothers' arms, elderly parents separated from their adult children, and siblings divided. The perpetrators, meanwhile, became increasingly desensitized to the human suffering before them, viewing the arrivals not as individuals, but as units to be processed. As the selected victims moved towards their assigned destinations, a grim reality set in. Those sent to the right faced a life of brutal forced labor, starvation, and disease. But it was those directed to the left who faced the most immediate and horrifying fate. Unbeknownst to them, they were being led directly to the gas chambers, their lives to be extinguished within hours of their arrival. The gas chambers, industrial-scale murder. As the selected victims moved towards their final destination, a sinister deception awaited them. The gas chambers of Auschwitz, perhaps the most lethal weapon in the Nazi arsenal, were disguised as ordinary shower rooms. This seemingly innocuous facade concealed a horrifying reality that would claim the lives of over 1 million people during the camp's operation. The unsuspecting prisoners were led to believe they were simply being deloused before entering the camp. SS guards instructed them to undress and remember where they left their belongings, maintaining the illusion that they would soon return. But as the large groups were herded into the chambers, a growing sense of unease began to spread. Once inside, the The doors were sealed shut with a sickening thud. As the victims waited in darkness, small pellets of Zyklon B, a cyanide-based pesticide, were dropped through openings in the ceiling. Within minutes, the room filled with a deadly gas that caused agonizing deaths. Survivors who witnessed the aftermath described scenes of unimaginable horror, with bodies tangled together as victims desperately tried to climb over one another to reach higher ground and escape the rising fumes. The efficiency of this killing method was terrifyingly apparent. In the largest gas chamber at Auschwitz-Birkenau, up to 2,000 people could be murdered in a single operation. The scale of death was industrial, with the camp's crematoria working day and night to dispose of the bodies. But the Nazi killing machine didn't stop at mere extermination. In a cruel twist of fate, Jewish prisoners known as Sonderkommandos were forced to assist in the gruesome process. These unfortunate souls were tasked with removing bodies from the gas chambers, extracting gold teeth, and operating the crematoria. Their existence was a living nightmare, as they were forced to participate in the murder of their own people, knowing that they too would eventually face the same fate. The psychological toll on the Sonderkommandos was immense. Many struggled with guilt and trauma, knowing that their survival came at the cost of facilitating mass murder. As one survivor, Philippe Mueller, recounted, "I was forced to keep myself from going mad. Surrounded by thousands of bodies, I had to eat, to drink, and to survive, because I had the duty to inform the world about this cyclopean massacre." The gas chambers represented the ultimate perversion of human ingenuity, death on an unprecedented scale. The Nazi regime had transformed a common pesticide into an instrument of genocide, and in doing so, forever stained the pages of history with one of its darkest chapters. The crematoria, erasing the evidence. Beyond the gas chambers, a sinister inferno awaited the victims of Auschwitz, one that could consume thousands of bodies daily. The Nazi killing machine faced an unprecedented challenge: how to dispose of the mounting corpses without leaving a trace of their heinous crimes. The answer lay in a series of structures that would become synonymous with industrial-scale murder and the desperate attempt to erase evidence of the Holocaust. As the bodies piled up at an alarming rate, the Nazi SS realized that traditional burial methods were woefully inadequate. The sheer volume of corpses threatened to overwhelm the camp's capacity and potentially expose their atrocities to the world. In response, they embarked on a gruesome engineering project: the construction of massive crematoria at Auschwitz-Birkenau. These crematoria were marvels of efficiency, designed with a chilling attention to detail. Each facility housed multiple furnaces, capable of incinerating bodies at an unprecedented pace. The process was meticulously planned. Bodies were stripped of valuables, then loaded onto elevators that transported them directly from the gas chambers to the furnace room above. There, they were systematically arranged on metal grates and reduced to ashes within hours. The environmental impact of this mass cremation was impossible to ignore. Thick, acrid smoke billowed from the chimneys day and night, casting a perpetual pall over the camp. The sickening stench of burning flesh permeated the air for miles around, serving as a constant reminder of the horrors taking place within Auschwitz's walls. Nearby farmers reported finding ash and bone fragments in their fields, grim evidence of the scale of the Nazis' extermination program. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the crematoria was the psychological toll it took on the prisoners forced to operate them. These unfortunate souls, known as Sonderkommandos, were tasked with the gruesome work of processing the bodies of their fellow inmates. they lived with the knowledge that they, too, would eventually face the same fate. Many were driven to madness by the relentless horror of their duties. One Sonderkommando survivor, Shlomo Venezia, later recounted the numbing effect of working in the crematoria. "We worked with the dead all the time. We ate there, slept there. It was impossible to clean ourselves from the filth. The trauma inflicted on these prisoners was unimaginable, leaving scars that would last a lifetime for the few who managed to survive." At the height of its operation, Auschwitz's network of crematoria reached a nightmarish level of efficiency. The combined capacity of these death factories allowed for the disposal of up to 4,400 bodies per day. A staggering figure that speaks to the industrial scale of the Nazis' genocidal ambitions. This grim statistic represents not just numbers, but individual lives, brutally extinguished and then erased from existence. Beyond the gas chambers, other methods of extermination. While the gas chambers and crematoria stand as chilling symbols of Nazi efficiency, they were far from the only tools of death at Auschwitz. The camp itself was a vast machine of extermination, where every aspect of daily life was weaponized against the prisoners. In this realm of calculated cruelty, the Nazis employed a myriad of methods to carry out their genocidal agenda, turning even the most mundane elements of existence into potential death sentences. Starvation was a silent but ever-present killer within the camp's walls. Prisoners were subjected to a deliberate policy of malnutrition, their daily rations barely enough to sustain life. The meager portions of watery soup and hard bread were often contaminated, further weakening those already on the brink of collapse. This calculated deprivation served a dual purpose. It weakened the prisoners' ability to resist and hastened their demise, all while preserving the facade of a labor camp rather than an outright extermination center. Disease ran rampant through the overcrowded barracks, transforming Auschwitz into a breeding ground for epidemics. Typhus, dysentery, and tuberculosis claimed countless lives. Their spread accelerated by the intentionally abysmal sanitary conditions. The Nazis cynically exploited these outbreaks, using them as justification for further selections and mass killings under the guise of containing the spread of illness. For those who survived the initial selection process, forced labor became a sentence of slow death. Prisoners were worked to the point of exhaustion in construction projects, factories, and mines. The infamous Canada warehouses, where victims' possessions were sorted, became a grim testament to the scale of the Holocaust. Here, amidst the personal belongings of the dead and soon-to-be dead, prisoners labored under the constant threat of violence and execution for the slightest perceived infraction. In the shadow of these systemic methods of extermination lurked even more insidious forms of cruelty. The medical experiments conducted by Joseph Mengele and his colleagues stand as some of the most horrific crimes committed at Auschwitz. Under the guise of scientific research, prisoners were subjected to torturous procedures, including forced sterilizations, twin studies, and exposure to extreme conditions. These experiments rarely yielded any valuable scientific data, but instead served as a pretext for sadistic brutality and murder. The camp's architecture itself was designed to facilitate death. The infamous standing cells in Block 11, known as the Block of Death, were tiny spaces where prisoners were forced to stand for days on end, often resulting in death from exhaustion or suffocation. The courtyard of this same block housed the death wall, where thousands faced execution by firing squad. These shootings, while less efficient than the gas chambers, served as a means of intimidation and a way to dispose of prisoners deemed particularly troublesome. Even the harsh Polish weather was weaponized against the inmates. Prisoners, clad in thin striped uniforms, were exposed to extreme cold in winter and sweltering heat in summer. Many succumbed to hypothermia or heat exhaustion, their deaths coldly recorded as natural causes by camp administrators. As the Red Army approached Auschwitz in January 1945, the true scale of the atrocities committed there came into horrifying focus. Over 1.1 million lives had been extinguished within its barbed wire fences. A staggering toll that shocked the world's conscience. The liberating soldiers, hardened by years of brutal warfare, found themselves unprepared for the nightmarish scenes that awaited them. Today, Auschwitz stands as a somber reminder of humanity's capacity for both unspeakable evil and remarkable resilience. The preserved ruins of gas chambers and crematoria serve as silent witness to the industrialized murder that took place there. Yet, amidst the remnants of horror, visitors also encounter stories of extraordinary courage and resistance. The Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum now dedicates itself to education and remembrance, ensuring that the voices of those who perished are never silenced, and that future generations learn from the darkest chapter in human history.